Igama lamakhosikazi wathinta abafazi wathinta imbokodo uzokufanya. That's our salutation for Women's Month as we continue to celebrate Women's Month. So happy Women's Month to everyone here. My name is Sizagele Shongwe from the National Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. I'm responsible for the program of social cohesion, nation building and target groups, which is older persons, people with disabilities, women and children. And so I just want to proceed to acknowledge the board of the Nelson Mandela Museum that are here, board members as well, including the chairperson. Also, I think the board members of the center that's hosting us today, and the chairperson in particular as well. I also would like to acknowledge our former Speaker of Parliament, Mbale Gambete, who's here with us today. I also see one of our social cohesion advocates who is here with us as part of the program from the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. There are very many important people that I might not be aware of, but welcome to everybody and all the distinguished guests and my young people. Jovicho Mtomcha Jovicho. Ola Mtomcha Ola. Zoitola kanjani? Yes, these are the young people that usually rejuvenate us. So welcome to the event that has been organized by the by the Nelson Mandela Museum this afternoon towards Women's Month. As we know, we continue to celebrate. I just want to remind the guests that the theme for Women's Month this year is accelerating socio-economic opportunities for women's economic empowerment. So that's what we're all about, and I hope you'll remember that it was launched on the 1st of August in KwaZulu-Natal. And of course, we celebrated after being rerouted from Khayelitsha in Western Cape to the Union buildings, but it was still celebratory. And just to say that this day is very important, and this month is very important, because it reminds us of those formidable women of 1956, the 20,000 that marched on Union buildings, the women that wanted to live free from discrimination, free from harassment, and free to be able to move anywhere. We're here where we are today because of them. And just to say as well that they didn't just march for our freedom as women, but for everybody else to get the liberties that we have today. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead to invite the Chief Operations Officer from Chikuluku, who is also a board member of the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center, to come and give us a welcome, opening and welcome remarks, and that is going to be Miss, is it Tracy? Tracy, yes, it's Tracy Henry. Please, ma'am, if you could come over, if she's already here. I wasn't made aware. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. Can you hear me? Great. So a good afternoon to our esteemed guests on this very warm and sunny day. And I hope that you will feel most welcome at this beautiful and reflective space, a place of memory, a place of education and lessons for humanity. When Talia and I chatted about this gathering, one of the thoughts that I had was about words and how words matter and indeed have consequences. An issue that is core to the work of the center and is woven into everything that it does. And it's very relevant whether we discuss the challenges and experiences of women in leadership, women's experiences in the Rwanda genocide and the Holocaust, as well as when we confront the challenges we face as a country when dealing with poverty, inequality, unemployment, and particularly how this relates to the girl child and to women. I was thinking about some of the words or messages that I grew up with, and I'm sure that many of you will relate to them as well. For example, actions speak louder than words, or choose your words wisely, Or sometimes it's better to be silent and listen rather than utter senseless words. And, one that I think all of us will also remember, children should be seen and not heard. These messages are relevant in a particular context. And in fact, one of the phrases that we use at my work, Chukululu, is Muntiro Yavulavula, which means actions speak louder than words. However, words alone can be incredibly powerful and empowering, and at the same time can be dangerous and destructive, and can have long-term consequences in terms of how we view our world and ourselves. The negative use of words and the consequences and impact of such has increasingly been exposed and raised alarm, particularly via social media, whether it be related to hate speech, derogatory statements, discriminatory words, and words that devalue individuals or communities' lived experiences. And so, whilst the phrase action speaks louder than words bears relevance when we want to move beyond words and focus on outcomes, we need to spend more time reflecting, listening, and being cognizant of what is being said, the words we use, and the consequences thereof. When we speak about the liberation of women and the freedom, autonomy, and ability to make choices without hindrance or control, are the words we use and the actions associated with this empowering and liberating? When a girl child has ambitions to break the generational cycle of poverty and aspires to achieve a big, hairy, audacious goal, are the words we use empowering, or are they constraining based on gender bias? When a woman, be it a colleague, friend, sister, neighbor, or family member, speaks out about abusive relationships, do we say, just stick it out, the tide will change? Or do we provide safe spaces and the support and tools needed to break the shackles of gender-based violence and femicide? And for women in leadership, be it in the corporate boardroom, leading non-profit organizations, or working at grassroots level in abject poverty-stricken areas, are we providing safe spaces for meaningful, constructive, and healing dialogue to support women to talk through very real issues of inequality, discrimination, prejudice, racism, abuse, and violence? The importance of creating safe spaces for dialogue, opportunities to reflect, learn from the past, and ensuring that the most vulnerable in our society in particular are not silenced, and that we honor and recognize these lived experiences, is needed for us to heal individually and as a nation, and to ensure that our words are recognized and that they matter and are empowering and healing. And so, in closing, what really gives me hope is that everyone present here today, and many other remarkable women, men, young people in our beloved country are doing just that through various individual or collaborative initiatives, using our platforms, our voices, our words, our agency to ultimately achieve the liberation of women in our homes, our schools, our places of work, our places of worship, our communities, our country, and our continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for those warm words of welcome. We really, truly feel welcome, and we can feel that spring is around the corner, summer is around the corner. It's going to be an interesting afternoon, so I'd like everybody to just relax and cut loose and let your hair be down there and listen carefully so that when you come to the discussions, we really have a lively discussion. And I'm not going to be that program director that's going to be telling stories, so I won't consume time. I'd rather, or summarize people's presentations, so I'd rather focus on what we're going to be all about. But I liked that message that came from Tracy in terms of words and how we use words, but particularly towards the end, she spoke about collaborations. And the one thing that I asked myself when we did the total shutdown walk at the height of GBV was that, why is it that we are actually not even more than 1,000, whereas the women of 1956 were 20,000? And it made me wonder if it has anything to do with proper collaboration and partnership, and more than anything, organizing. Because I think those women were very organized and very disciplined. That's why they were able to do that. So I'm not too sure if our generation, in fact not mine, because I'm already on the other side as well, the younger ones, if they have that. So it would be interesting to have that kind of dialogue as well. So we're going to have an interesting discussion from liberation to leadership to mental health to personal experiences about all these things that women go through. And on that note, then, I would like to call upon the next speaker. I would have thought that there would be an elaborate presentation, so, Madam, you will forgive me if it's limited. But we're going to call upon Ms. Baleka Mbete, who's going to talk to us about the total liberation of women in Africa, towards the total liberation of women in Africa. She's also talking to us as part of the board of NALISA. Madam, over to you. Thank you. Malibongwe!
I'll resist being who I am, an old lady. I will politely recognize Dr. Vuyani, Ndileka, the people who run the Nelson Mandela Museum that has collaborated with the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center. I feel honored to have been invited and also invited to express some few insights into part of what has been my journey of life. I think to be able to play the role that I was invited to come and play, which is to speak at this point of a very important exchange of ideas as well as points that need to be noted by role players of history. And no role players for me are deserving of attention. And I actually think a month in a year maybe is not adequate. Perhaps we should have some days in every month to be focusing our minds on what to do what deserves to be done for women. I was brought up by a woman who was active when I was a child, before I even got into my teens, in the 50s. She, and this is something I realized with hindsight, was involved in the campaigns of the 50s. Remember, in the struggle for liberation in South Africa, the 50s became very, very energetic, having been guided by younger people like Madiba at the end of the 40s. So with a program of action that they had put on the table, the 50s as they started were a very energetic time. So by the mid-50s, some of the campaigns that were happening in KZN, where I was born and where I grew up. I realized later, as I say, in fact, as I was about to come back from exile, back to South Africa, that my parents were actually politically involved. I hadn't known, because they were not sharing that with us. But my mother, I remembered, had been active, and there used to be meetings at my home. And I then realized, as I read history, as I came across Charlotte Maxeke's name in exile, from the older women who received my generation, when we were beginning to grapple with the realities of exile life and organizing ourselves, it was decided that one of the people whose names deserved a mention and perhaps a way to keep it alive was Charlotte Maxeke. So when UNESCO helped us to start childcare center facilities for the exile communities, the older women suggested that we had to call it the Charlotte Maxeke Child Care Center. So I realized that my own mother must have benefited from the activism of earlier generations like Charlotte Maxeke, because she would have grown up in that time. Of course, fast forward back in South Africa, I am aware that there had never been a national demonstration on anything until Charlotte Maxeke led the first national demonstration around the issue of land and around the issue that used to apply directly to women, in particular, who would have been living in the reserves of the country, in the rural areas, trying to keep families alive, keeping life going on, and so on, while the men were being recruited to the urban areas, the urban centers where, like here in Johannesburg, gold had been discovered. Gold had been discovered in Kimberley. Of course, diamonds had been discovered, and urban areas needed this, labor force to be recruited, and the men were being brought to these urban centers. And the women were the victims, direct victims of what ensued back where they had to keep life going on, keep the families going on, bring up their children in the absence of men, and therefore felt directly the effects of the past laws and the whole system of needing to carry a pass in order to show that you are where you are legally. You are in your country, all right, nobody's talking about that, but you have to account for being where you are. And women are supposed to be kept away from these men who have come to be the labor force that must dig the gold out, dig the diamonds out, and make and create this modern world we now live in. So all these thoughts came back to me that women have never been silent about those things. Charlotte Maxeke was the first leader to lead a demonstration, while her counterparts, our leaders back then, would form delegations, get into a ship and go to England to talk to the Queen about the question of human rights and the oppression and suppression of the rights of people back here in the colonies. So I think history, therefore, is very loud about the role that the women over the decades, over history, have played. Of course, women, when the urban centers opened up, had to become also workers at a certain point, had to join the working forces, but play the role that is expected of women, that is looking after the families of the bosses, who were the bosses to their husbands and brothers and fathers and so on. So history has enough about that. I know this is based on a history here in our country, which is what we know, so what we can best talk about. But I know that even around the continent, there are similar stories, because colonization was not only confined to South Africa, it was not only in the continent of Africa, but beyond. And that's why when our leaders went to study abroad, they came across counterparts of their ages from the rest of the colonized world. And therefore, you then develop a culture of internationalism and a way of looking at things from that collaborative space and sharing of, in fact, the actual experiences you were coming from, but which were similar. And in other cases, in fact, you would find that your colonizers were the same people coming from the same European countries, who are still today found on the wrong side of history as far as Africa is concerned. Because as far as Africa is concerned, we don't need a war. We don't need wars, because we women give birth to children not to go to war and be killed. We are just generally anti-war in perspective by birth, and therefore we take that position on an informed basis, on the basis of actual life, and our spirituality tells us it's not the thing to do to give birth and hand over to a war. And any violent situation actually is an anti-woman situation. I'm not saying women are not found on the wrong side of these positions that I'm expressing, but I'm saying we also know from the same woman, Charlotte Maxeke, to take an anti-war stance whenever you have to look at any issue that relates to people who kill each other, supposedly to solve a problem. There's no solution in a war, because a solution that takes life is not a solution. It's an anti-life stance. And being a woman, being a mother of 5 children, I'm anti-violence, I'm anti-war, I'm anti-anything that takes a life away. And I therefore say, as we meet here this afternoon, to go over examples of history that are very sad, that are very not progressive, let us remember the lessons of history, and let us, in fact, celebrate the courage of women that history shows us, in fact, took the right positions and played roles that we must learn lessons and follow, rather than pursue issues that are about immediate gratification sometimes, but are actually not for the common good, which is what we women contribute lives in order to build life, in order to take us forward constructively. And I'm saying, I hope that we will part on the note that tells us that that would be what to take out from here. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah. All right.
right. Thank you very much, Mambete, for those words that are helping us chart the way towards total liberation for women. And I just like that part that you dwelt on the role of women, and to say that we do not want war, we do not like war, we do not start wars, actually. So really, but at the end of the day, you find that we are the ones who are bearing the consequences of that at all levels, whether it's having to travel further distances to get fuel in terms of firewood or clean water or food or that kind of thing, or just making sure that the person who's supposed to be at the front of the war is as well as feeling comfortable. We know where the war is right now. I'm just feeling, I don't know how Mrs. Ukraine feels right now, but you really also have to play that role of making sure that the home is still kept afloat. You still continue to play your gender roles. I think we'll continue then to hear more about issues of women in mediation, conflict resolution, and peace building. And so we'll now swiftly move on to a panel discussion. And I hope all my esteemed panel members are here, because I'd like, as I call them each, to come up and join me on the stage. I think we'll fill in these 4 chairs. We've got 4 panelists that we're going to have for the discussion this afternoon. The first one being Dr. Nomvuselelo Osongelwa. I hope she's here. I'm going to welcome Dogotela. I'm going to introduce her in full when she goes into her presentation. We'd also like to have Ms. Tali Nates to come and join us here. She's also going to be addressing one of the topics. And particularly in terms of the life experiences we'd like to have, we're going to also have somebody who is going to talk to us about the Rwanda genocide as a survivor, Miss Christine Nwemfura. Is she here? Please come and join us on stage. And then the other person that we're going to have to talk to us in terms of summation, she's going to be talking about the studies on difficult histories from a psychological perspective, and that's our clinical psychologist. I think that's Karen Kaddish. Please come and join us. And so we'll go ahead to start with our first presenter. I don't know if the technical team is going to help us with the microphones, but I think they can also come to the podium. But we are going to have Dr. Songelwa, who is also a member of the Nelson Mandela Museum and an active and full member of the African Board for Coaching, Consulting, and Coaching Psychology. She's also an author of a book called Life Lessons of a Cattle Header. Yeah, and so she's going to talk to us about reflections from the boardroom and Lipstick Chronicles. Dr. Songela, over to you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I do not have that language of youth because I am an elder who grew up in rural areas and herding cattle. So my language is just rural, simple woman, but I really also want to greet the youth today. I was just so inspired by Mama Balega's reflection of history. Because as I ascended within corporate and get to experience women empowerment programs, I really felt that rural women in particular are misrepresented. Because I know my mother and the community of Tsilitwa, where I come from, have never been silenced. But they have the power within that a lot of people who are looking at rural women and women who are not educated is actually flawed. And unfortunately, even the policies that we actually put in place as part of transformation in this country, we're looking at a Western perspective. So for me, as a rural woman who was in leadership, could not really associate with them. So Mama Baleka, thank you very much for that reflection. What I really want to do today is to confine my engagement with the experience that I went through, but on behalf of the women in leadership who actually went through, especially in the last 29 years. And you will appreciate that the women who have been in the positions of power within that period might have experienced very challenging experiences within the corporate. But I also want to talk about the fact that when we talk about leadership, we only think about those people who are wearing lipsticks. And in fact, the reason why I wrote this book and said it's Lipstick Chronicles is to kind of say that sometimes we glamorize those women by interrogating numbers and actually saying, yes, so many of these women. And we never, ever engage them in a reflective way about the experiences that they are going through. In that respect, because I'm an elder, I'm worried about the youth, and I would not like the youth to repeat, the experiences and the history to repeat itself. And yet, that's the reason why today, as an elder, an oath, as a coach and an author, I really engage with people through inspiring engagements, not only looking at challenges, but also solutions. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the challenges. So through the coaching experience and engaging with the people who are in the positions of power, women in particular, it actually came, I don't want to say it's a surprise, it is, that some of the women who get into the positions of power are naive because of the trusting, nurturing spirit that they have. They get in excited and thinking that technical skills are the thing that are going to make them achieve. Yes, I've got a degree and whatever. And yet, when they get into those spaces, they find unsafe environment for them to lead authentically and make an impact. So here I speak on behalf of those women, whom some of them are reflected in this book, and some of men whom we actually spoke to. And they say, hey, this thing is true. But women in particular are experiencing very serious problems. So there are 4 areas that I just want to touch on. When women get on board and they are in these institutions, firstly, some of the things that they do, they are self-sabotaging. So I call that voluntary or involuntary silencing. Because they experience these challenges, then they lose who they are. They experience these challenges that challenge their own values. And because they want to fit into this square that has been created before they came in, and their secular leadership or individuality or being can fit in. But what then they do, they have to fake and become, what do they call it? Imposter syndrome. So because we want to fit in, we want to be seen, to be competent, yet we are not that kind of, we're not competitive, we're more collaborative. And we get judged. Just by you getting in, being appointed, there are serious expectations of how you should look and behave professionally. A professional woman must wear lipstick, you can't come with this and this and this. So you judge by your peers. And a lot of women are saying, even those people that brought them on board, it's either your supervisor or board members, the people who are supposed to be supporting you, women and men, people that report to you as well. So women then kind of like, with all the responsibility that they have, where they have to fit into this environment, yet they do have this so much expectation from home, from the community, from their friends, from families, in terms of now you are in this position of power. They continue to have self-doubt and lose confidence. The second aspect has to do with interpersonal silencing by both men and women. So when people talk to you, if it's men, if it's women, it's still like, no, you are not like that other person. You are not tough enough. You are pretty. What does that mean? So those subtle kind of innuences, is that what it's called? Innuendos, you're so bossy. But in defense, then women decide, okay, this is what I am going to do, because people get respected in this way in this organization, because there are unwritten rules that they haven't actually seen. And some of the people are talking about some of the things that we actually negate. Unfortunately, some women use a strategy of sleeping up to protect themselves, find a support system, and forget that they are sabotaging themselves. The third aspect is when it's like group or team that it mobilizes themselves around you. Either it's people that report to you, they work together with people that are on top, and you think that the organogram determines the flow of information within the organization. You will find that the person at the gate, at the reception, actually knows more and has more power than the people within. And we actually don't know that. No one teaches us that. And what happens, you find that there is this kind of, there's gatherings that are happening outside the working times. People will go golfing or whatever. Decisions get taken elsewhere and they are sealed in the boardroom. And when you come to the boardroom, you can look at the body language that they know who's going to talk. You say something, you are ignored, or it's like someone else has to say this thing. When someone said something else, then the decision is made. That's silencing, team silencing, group silencing. And there's also of the organizations. The organizations themselves, the policies that we still have, unfortunately, are discriminatory. Tell me of one woman who is going through a traditional initiation that has to wear inzimbi as a leader who can actually go to the boardroom. Tell me of one woman whose culture is about wearing black when the husband has died for 12 or 6 months in others, who is actually accepted in the boardroom. Yet you find out that other cultures are accommodated in the boardroom. So this Western notion and the ideas of what the boardroom is all about is actually silencing some group of women, in particular African women. So I tell these challenges on behalf of people that cannot talk about these things because we fear that we are going to be labeled as not only weak, but emotional or aggressive. And women don't talk about those things. We talk about them when we are sitting in a coffee table on, restaurants. But institutions don't talk about those things. Some of the people silence women knowingly or unknowingly, directly or indirectly. So in conclusion, what I want to just highlight 3 things. Leadership is a painful and spiritual journey. The MBAs don't talk about that. The books, they don't talk about that. You need to have a psychological capital when you get into these organizations. That's the first thing. So these safe healing spaces are needed. The second thing that I wanted, just in conclusion, to say is that we need each other, both men and women. Exclusive programs that are taking away the boy child and men as part of making the working environment a healthier environment are actually defeating the very same goal of transformation. The third thing is we need each other. We need each other. And with those words, ladies and gentlemen, women need to talk more about these issues if we want to change the world. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dogotela, for the experiences that you've given us and the challenges in terms of leadership. Much appreciated voice of experience, which links up to another voice of experience we had earlier in terms of the rich history that we have where women's leadership is concerned. I think I hadn't mentioned that it's going to be 10 minutes strictly for the speakers, so I think I'd like us to try to keep to the time so that we can have time for discussions, even less if we can. And I know that the CEO didn't have in the program an item for entertainment, and I know we said this is a quiet space, sacred space, but hayi akuvumi sizoyizama kancane ne sithi leli lizwe elamakhosikazi asoze aphela amandla asoze aphela leli lizwe elamakhosikazi asoze aphela amandla 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 asoze Malibongwe. Kamala Makosikazi. All right, on the podium, we are going to call Ms. Tali Nates, who's going to be talking to us about women's resilience during the Holocaust. Ms. Tate here is one of the co-founders of the Holocaust and Tutsi genocide survivors groups in Johannesburg. She has lectured internationally on Holocaust education, genocide prevention, reconciliation, and human rights. She has won several awards, which are listed in the booklet that we have here before us. So we'd just like to invite her to come to the podium.
Thank you so much. And hopefully you can hear me. Wonderful to, first of all, welcome all of you and the inspiring words that we heard so far that are so connected to what we do here in the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center. We look at the past in order to connect this past to ourselves today, to learn from the past, to be reflective about the past, and to make connections between different pasts. So I'm going to talk to you today about Rwanda, about Europe, but all the time also about South Africa. Because we look at the past, we connect to now, and we try to learn lessons about ourselves, about resilience, about how to get inspired by stories that we hear. And today I'm going to tell you some stories, and you will watch with me short clips of stories of women and men that really were resilient. They were people with courage, and like my friend Vusi, they helped each other. They were there together. And those stories connect also to myself. I'm alive. I'm standing here speaking to you because someone saved my father's life. Not his sisters, not his mother, but himself. And because he was saved, I'm alive. As simple as that. And these are the kind of stories that I am going to share with you. We mark Women's Month this month, and the stories I will share are stories of survival, stories of people that made that survival possible. And as I said, I invite you to reflect about the challenges, but also what we can learn from those stories. And you see in this, from our permanent exhibition, two survivors. One from the Holocaust, from Poland, Irene Klaas. She was just here yesterday. She's 92 years old. Wonderful, wonderful woman. Speaking to a Rwandan survivor, Sylvester, who survived as a 12-year-old, and he thought it will never happen again, but sadly, history repeats itself. So it does happen again. The first story I'll share with you is how neighbors can help each other and make a difference between life and death. I'm going to tell you the story of Emmanuel Mwezi. He studied here in South Africa. He lived here for many years now. He's back in Rwanda, but he was a survivor. And he survived a very, very difficult situation thanks to his neighbors. To his neighbors that were Hutu. He was Tutsi, but they saved his life. The Hutu mother that said, I will make a difference. I will save your family. The Hutu father that said, I will protect you. Let's listen to some of his testimony.
Me, my brother Bernard, and Jeff, we went down to the lake because we said we shouldn't hide in the same place. Because maybe if they find one, they might kill one, and the others will survive. But now the problem, there were hippos in that wreck. We saw like 40 of them. So we decided to go on top of the tree. Down they went into the wreck. So now we could see where they were swimming, their destination. Now it's 7 o'clock, the sun is out, which means the killers are out also, because in the morning that's when you could hear the screaming, the chasing, the dogs. I had a friend, we didn't even know he was hiding not far from there. So we saw him, they found him, dogs. That boy was not really a good swimmer, so he jumped into the water, he tried to swim, but they came, they had guns, they shot him. He was in my class, I remember him. That day, that's when I was like, okay, this is real. Because that was the first time I saw someone being just killed in front of me. But couldn't, nothing, could just keep quiet. Pray that they don't find you.
And indeed, he survived with most of his family, thanks to his neighbors. Because in that genocide, 1 million Tutsi were murdered in 3 months. And we need to learn. You spoke about war is not the answer, killing is not the answer. Absolutely. And he said, I was saved by a Hutu. That's my life. And if there are people who say, no, maybe he did help you, but he wanted to kill others, that's not up to me to judge. If that guy was not there at that time, none of us will be alive. Now let me introduce you to a Holocaust survivor. She passed away during COVID, very sadly. But she was a wonderful, wonderful artistic woman. Her name was Asia Lieberman from Lithuania. And her family, her father, her sister, and her younger brother, and herself were saved again by a neighbor. Sadly, not her one sister, sadly, not her mother. They were murdered by the Nazis in Lithuania during the Second World War, during the Holocaust. But the 4 of them were helped by a neighbor who was Lithuanian, who hid them in a barn. His name was Jozas Markiviečius. He was very poor. He had no money, yet he risked his own life to save a full family. Not only them, they brought in another 3 that looked for shelter. In the end, he saved 7 people. Him, his wife, and his children. Saved a whole family. In the end, 1 more joined. 8 were living in the barn for nearly 3 years, only crawling, cannot stand, not to be found. And Asia reflected, the farmer was like an angel. He looked after us. Wherever he could do, he did. And he was recognized as a righteous person because he saved, his wife, his children saved 8 people. And these are people that don't know each other. So it's amazing that you save someone that you do not know. let me tell you one more story. The story of Sylvester, who you met before. Sylvester survived thanks to a religious woman, a nun from Germany. And he tells his story to you here. Let's listen to it. Oh, sorry.
Rwandans people used to believe that in the church, no one should attack a church. And whoever was there had to be safe. Attacking church is like attacking God. In the morning we hear bomb, everywhere. So now we've been attacked. What was the difference? There were cows. The cow is in front of you, and then you throw stone. It comes to a time whereby the cows run away. Now is a war face to face. So they hit me at the back, everywhere, and here. But then, let me tell you that the memory when you know that you're going to die, I think there's no pains. My soul was gone, my spirit was gone. What was there was just a body. I never feel anything, but I remember when they hit me here, I told myself, you know what, if they hit me again, I'm gone. But the fact that too much blood was out, they were just seeing blood only. They thought, oh, we're done with this one. Yeah, it's dead. The morning, they're coming to bury us. Or they're coming to check whoever is still alive. I ran away. This Catholic sister, the one who was from Germany, was having a medical center. He used to keep on bribing people always that they must not kill us.
And you can learn that people are bad and evil and kill each other, but see the resilience, staying alive, people are helping each other. And in that way, now, I filmed him probably about 5-6 years ago. Sylvester today is a father of 3 children. And that is inspiring. Just very quickly, let's meet one more survivor. Someone that survived also the Holocaust. She also lives here in Johannesburg, and that is Irene Klaas that you met before. And she speaks about education. Education is key. And she speaks about how it was not allowed to study during the Holocaust, but her mother managed to find the means for her to study in secret, because education was so important that they studied in secret. And they were hiding the books the minute the Germans, the Nazis came. And that is an inspiring story of resilience when you are told you are not allowed to, but you do. And maybe the story of doctors. Doctors were on our mind the last years of the pandemic. And doctors in the same ghetto where Irene was, this is the Warsaw ghetto, very large ghetto where everyone was crowded, 500,000 Jews were crowded in the capital city of Poland. And in that place, the doctors, about 1,000 doctors, continued to work, and I'm telling you the story of one of them. One of them was the mother of Vanda. Vanda is a survivor that lives in South Africa, in Johannesburg. Her mother was a doctor, a young doctor, only 30 years old, Halina Rothstein. When they were in the ghetto, and you can see the picture of Halina with the 4 children that she had, she wanted to have 12 children. She never managed to have 12 children. She was murdered. But she had 4 children, and Vanda is the smiling one with a little dog. But they were put in the ghetto, and you can see the form from the ghetto and how this beautiful woman looks after she is in the ghetto, after she is targeted and called a Jew, put a star and saying, you are subhuman, you are not human. She tried to help the patients. She tried to help her mother. Helena tried to help her own mother. She had typhus. She died. She couldn't help anyone. But in the end, she decided to smuggle out the 4 children outside to safety, to an orphanage. She stayed with her patients, and she went to her death with her patients at 35 years old. The resilience of Wanda, that never spoke, that was silent, but started to speak 10 years ago because she said, no one knows of my mother's bravery. Because one of the doctor gave testimony about how she went to her death. The doctor, Helena. And he said, you can see it here, how calm was this woman. Perhaps just a little younger than me, in the middle of unparalleled uproar and the general anxiety in the hospital, when it became clear that the heads wouldn't leave the hospital. Dr. Rothstein did not hesitate and took everything under her control. The children walked by themselves, with only some of them being carried away in arms. Adults, patients were usually transported on stretchers. This was horrible, incomparably more horrible than a procession of healthy people walking towards their demise. On the 12th of September 1942, she went with those children, with those patients, to their death in Treblinka. This is Wanda. We were with Wanda about a month ago in the place where her mother was murdered, and that is Treblinka. It's a memorial. And she was able to offer a prayer to her mother, to light a candle, and to say Our Father. She's Catholic. To say Our Father, and to thank her mother for her courage and resilience in saving the 4 kids. Because Wanda will not be alive without her mother's sacrifice. Maybe finally, just a lesson. First of all, listen to the stories. Mambete shared with us stories. You shared with us your rural upbringing stories. Listen to the stories. Those stories are gold. And remember, in the words of Romeo Delay, that headed the UN mission to Rwanda, he said to us, all humans are human. There is no human more human than another. We are all human. Listen to each other. Get inspired by those stories. A Holocaust survivor, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, Elie Wiesel, famously said, when you listen to a witness, you become a witness. So become witnesses. And I had the honor in this picture, you see 2 witnesses that I heard and learned from. A family of a Holocaust survivor, Henry Buch, that at 3 years old, to survive, was hidden by a Polish family as a little girl because he was blonde, with long hair. And he had sisters. The girls of the family called him, Henry, my sister. And I had the honor of going back to Poland and meeting his sisters, and the hugs and the cries and the thankfulness for saving his life. I remember that story. But I also remember a Dutch lawyer living in Pretoria that during the war in the Netherlands, Jaap van Broestek, saved the lives of 222 Jews in Holland by forging their baptismal papers. And when I asked him, why did you do it, Jaap? And he said, what do you mean? If you are in the ocean and you see someone drowning, wouldn't you jump in and save that person? I'm not such a good swimmer, so I'm not sure that I'll do it. You know, but that is the thing. For him, there was no wrong answer. You have to be there for each other. And with that, I invite you to see some of the publications that we have about hate speech and how we can fight hate speech, how can we become resilient, and hopefully all of us will become there for each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Tele, for that interesting pictorial presentation that you gave to us, and just for keeping it real. But I think the next speaker is going to actually give us a good feel. Is it even a good feel? But the true experience of being a survivor in the genocide that happened in Rwanda. Her name is Christina Niwemfura, born in Rwanda herself, and the only survivor in her family. She has her own family now. So we'll just hand over to her to just give us her experience. Sissy?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you to share my story and how I survived genocide in Rwanda. I was born in south of Rwanda. During Rwanda genocide in 1994, about 1 million people were killed. People were killed, raped, others were seriously injured. The militia men would force women to submit sexual threats that they would be killed if they refused. During Rwanda genocide, rape and the other form of violence were directed against Tutsi women because of both their gender and their ethnicity. Perpetrators used to use sexually tortures and mutilation. I want to share with you my story of how I survived genocide in Rwanda. I was born in south of Rwanda. When genocide started, I was 8 years old, staying with my parents. We were 4 kids in our family, and I was the firstborn. My father was looking after his farm, and my mother was always with us. I remember we used to go to church every Sunday. We were actually a big family, my aunties, my uncles, my grandmothers, and my grandfathers. During the genocide, all were killed. I survived only alone with my 3 cousins, my 3 aunties and my 3 cousins. I lost all my parents and siblings, and the new life I did not expect intruded. At my age, I didn't know anything about my tribe or how people can kill each other. Only I knew that I am a Tutsi because I was alone in the class and I had to ask my parents and confirm my identity. This was very traumatizing to me since I felt I'm not a normal human being. In 1994, when the killing started, we have to flee with our parents, and they decided to hide us with their Hutu family friend. 2 of us and a baby of 2 years. The idea was that probably we could survive or not be killed in front of them. Later on, my mother decided to come back and to fetch us so that we can stay together and die together. It did not take time for militia to come where we were hiding. What I remember, they came with machetes and other weapons. They did not want to kill us with bullets. Instead, they forced us to drink poison. They said they cannot kill cockroaches with machetes or bullets. We did drink that poison, but nothing happened to us. They started chopping my mother with machetes and she fell on me. She was kicked in the stomach, and this time she was pregnant of another baby. She was bleeding everywhere, and I was hit in the head, and I still have scars. As my mother was lying on me, they thought I was dead. Of course, I lost conscience, but I followed what was happening. The next turn was for my brother. I could hear them saying that they rather cut his private part because he's the one who's going to make more Tutsis. Eventually, they killed everyone in that hiding. After they have left, I managed to get out of those bodies. Only my young brother, who said that I should not leave him behind. We didn't know where to go or what to do. The killers were searching people in the bushes, sometime who could hide or not. We thought probably our uncle would hide us. And just before their house, they were lying in their yard. We decided again to go to this Hutu family. The first thing I was given is a dress, since the one I was wearing was full of blood, and they gave me some milk to drink. At the beginning, the family was so kind, but as days was going on, they changed and they brought militia to kill us. My younger brother I left with was immediately killed. They buried him alive, what I was told, saying that he will become a man, and they said for me I will become a woman, they should not worry about me. Just only 2 days, they came back to throw me in the toilet. From that day, I have to spend the whole day in the bush and come back in the evening. They got me in the bush where I was hiding, and I was taken to the hole like a trench. They forced me to lie down again, and I was hit again strongly in the head. They started putting soil on me. I still remember my head became inflated, and I lost all the conscience. After that, they were telling everyone that the last snake has been killed. The same evening, I went back to that family, and they were joking, saying that I'm a ghost and I will live forever. When I reached to that family, I didn't have a conscience. I only woke up when they said, "Oh, she's coming back." That's when I realized I'm there. I did not stay longer since soldiers, they came to rescue us. Then I was taken to an orphanage in Kigali, and I went back to school. My few aunties and cousins survived with me. We started a new family just to help each other. I managed to finish my primary school and high school. And then I came here, I did a diploma in IT network management. And I'm a mother of 2 kids. Telling my personal story to others helped me in my healing. It is also a way of honoring those who lost their lives during the genocide. We don't want to forget them. My first experience telling my story, however, was not easy. I did not have words to describe what happened to me and my story. Thank you so much.
All right. That was quite something. I cannot even begin to understand how it feels to go through that kind of trauma. And I'm saying this because the next speaker that is going to talk to us is going to talk about that psychological trauma. But I went to Rwanda, Kigali in 2019, yes. And actually one of the locals themselves, when we were supposed to go to the memorial, said that she's not going to do this to herself again. So you can imagine how deep it is. But as for me, when we were there, there's what you call Muganda. It's a day when everybody goes in and does work and clean. In fact, it was a program that we thought we could bring back to South Africa. Now, when we were passing the people that were going to the stations that were going to be working, they were carrying the machetes. I was freaked out because it just brought to me that memory that why are they carrying this? Who are they going to kill? Where are they going with this? So I think the trauma is that deep, just from a secondary perspective from somebody else, so you can imagine the person that actually experienced it. So the person who's going to now talk to us about that issue of psychological trauma is a clinical psychologist, Marilyn Kaddish, and she has her biography here. She's a clinical psychologist, as we have said, since 2012, and she began volunteering at the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center. During this time, she's actually been involved in various activities as well, and in addition, she contributes to the educational team, which organizes workshops in this regard. So if you could just come and talk to us, ma'am. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome here today. It is a real privilege for me to be standing here today in front of such esteemed guests, listening to Christine, Tully. All of you, I have learned so much today. I'm going to be speaking about the psychological aspects of, when I speak about the Holocaust and the genocide in Rwanda, I use that mostly because it is the two showcases that we use here at the Holocaust and Genocide Center. But I'm really speaking about all dark histories in the past. And I speak about the work that we do here at the center because I think it embraces so much of what what everybody here has been saying today. The question of why we learn about Holocaust and other genocides is a valid one. There are people who say it happened in the past and we must pack it away and leave it there. Psychologists, historians, and educators generally agree that it is important to teach about Holocaust and other genocides, even though it can be an emotional experience. It is believed that by learning about these events, we can help prevent future atrocities by raising awareness of hatred and intolerance. According to a study done by the Psychological Association in 2018, teaching about genocide can help students to develop empathy for victims. They can learn about tolerance and understanding and develop critical thinking skills. When you listen to Christine's story, it becomes crystal clear why and how important it is to educate society about these dark histories. Christine's story is a reminder of the horrors of genocide and the importance of fighting against hatred, othering, and intolerance, and that we must never forget these victims. Learning about these histories creates an opportunity for empathizing with and humanizing the victims. Emotion is an integral part of genocide education, and encouraging empathy is a great tool to encourage learners to connect with the victims of genocide. It is difficult to comprehend 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, or nearly 1 million Tutsi and moderate Hutu that were murdered in the genocide in Rwanda. We should not see this as statistics or crush it into a single unit, but should rather listen to the personal stories, the testimonies, examine the photographs, and use visual stimuli in order to connect to humanity and see the victims as individuals who had potential, who had dreams, and each one had a name. Stephen Smith from the USC Shoah Foundation speaks about the importance of listening to testimonies. He explains why witnesses to the past are important for building a more peaceful future. He explains that everyone thinks the Shoah Foundation is about archiving the past, but it is about understanding empathy and using testimony to shine a light. Learning about genocide also encourages critical thinking. At our center, we encourage students to have an understanding of their own identities, and that in order to face history, we must face ourselves and learn lessons for our own humanity from these tragic events. It is very important to encourage dialogue. Amy Edmonton, who's an organizational psychologist, speaks about psychological safety. Her theory is about being comfortable to share ideas, which we have done so much of today, and the freedom of expression without feeling intimidated. We also discuss the range of moral choices which were made by ordinary people during the Holocaust and the genocide in Rwanda. We encourage learners to understand the roles of perpetrators, bystanders, collaborators, and upstanders, and that these choices are fluid and can change. At this point, we must remember the righteous among the nation, which Tully has spoken about. Oskar Schindler was a perfect example of choices being fluid, how we can move in the choices that we make. He went from being a high-ranking Nazi, from being a perpetrator, to becoming an upstander and saving 1,200 Jews. When we speak about 1,200 Jews that were saved, it's not just 1,200 Jews, but generations and generations of Jews who were saved because he made this choice to save lives. And if I may say that Tully Nates' father and uncle's names were on Oskar Schindler's list, and as she said, she would not be here today if for someone who didn't save her life. Irina Sendler, who was a Polish social worker, risked her life to save Jewish babies from the Warsaw Ghetto. She exemplifies compassion, empathy, and bravery, not only displaying altruistic behavior. She is an example of morality and the belief in the value of every human life. In our world today, her lessons teach us about making a difference in the face of adversity and standing up to injustice. Within our program at the center, we use an exercise to encourage students to reference specific circumstances when they have encountered certain choices in their own lives. Through discussion, they reflect on times when they were chosen to be a bystander or an upstander at a particular moment. We emphasize that all choices have consequences. We speak about bullying at school and how the bystander enables the perpetrator. We show them how they can move from being passive bystanders to being able to make a difference in their schools, in their families, in their personal lives, and in their communities. We encourage them to become accountable members of society and young citizens who take an active stand when confronted with injustices, aiming to create a more caring and just society in which human rights and diversity are respected and valued throughout South Africa. Ending off a workshop with our students, it is very important that we make sure that they feel safe. We debrief them by asking them to share their thoughts and feelings and to help process their emotions. The last thing that we do is we present them with a blank butterfly, which is part of a global butterfly project symbolizing hope. If you go outside of the room, you'll see our board with our butterflies. We ask them to write down something they have learned from the workshop or a commitment that they can make to make the world a better place. I'm so pleased to see that we have students here from a school today, and I wanted to share some of the students' words who recently did a workshop to emphasize the importance of teaching about genocide and dark histories from a psychological perspective. From the comments, you will see the positive impact of learning lessons for humanity from our two histories we showcase. One example recently from a young girl stated, she said, "Every person is human. Do not look at anyone as other or different from yourself." Another student stated, "Every one of those people had a name and a life. We must remember them to live life to its fullest." Another student said, "We can't control what happens, but we can control our choices." This is just a taste of the impact that the learners have when learning about Holocaust and the genocide in Rwanda at our center. One can see from this some growth from students who will hopefully navigate their futures making better choices. In conclusion, when we learn about these dark histories of genocide and dark histories in general, there are profound psychological benefits that resonate deeply in our contemporary world. We have learned that through unpacking these dark chapters, it provides learners with the ability to foster empathy, resilience, and learn the dangers of indifference and unchecked prejudice. It can provide a commitment to combat intolerance in our own lives and is a call to action to stand up against hatred and discrimination and to foster tolerance where every individual is respected and valued. I would just like to end off today with the profound words of Desmond Tutu, who sums up all of these sentiments. He says, "We learn about the Holocaust so that we can become more human, more gentle, more caring, more compassionate, valuing every person as being of infinite worth, so precious that we know that such atrocities will never happen again, and the world will become a more humane place." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that insightful presentation. A true demonstration that the mind is really complex. And I'm glad that we had a tour guide when we got here who told us that the topic or the subject of genocide is now done as a subject in the schools. And social science was whatever. When we grew up, we didn't even have that. But it's a good thing that it's in the schools and it's in the curriculum. So, Bantabam, which other genocides happened in Africa? And it's not pass one, pass all. Pass one, pass all. Any other genocide we know about? In Africa, because it's not just a European and a Western. Makulu, wait, what happened? Where? Okay, Ma, help them. Was that in Southwest Africa? Namibia, right? Yes, by the Germans. Another one? If I had 1,000 rand, I'd give that one.
To the exhibition now, eh?
But it's the Rwandan one, 1994. Guys? Nah? Okay, that's fine. Anyways, we've come to that point where now we're going to go into the Q&A. I think we've got about 5 to 10 minutes for that, which will be followed by the signing of a memorandum of understanding. So I think if there are any questions from the floor, it's the time to do it now. I think maybe I can also get one of the young people to help us with a roving microphone if there is questions, comments. Thank you, ma'am. Mbogochwana. Yes, malibongwe kuleyo ndawo. Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Asanda. I'm a journalist from Rosebank Gazette. So my question is to Christine. So besides talking to people about your journey and traumatic experiences, did you go for counseling or therapy in your healing journey?
No, I didn't go for counseling. It's only I'm speaking to people and I'm a volunteer at Holocaust and Genocide Center. I always speak to the school.
Right, that was the one question on if she had received counseling, and I hope everybody was able to hear. So did you, Sisina. Right, any other question? While you're getting your thought processes in place, Talen, I think to you, for me, the issue about the quotation that you have in the museum, never again, which was also said by our, our statesmen, to say never, never, and never again. Why is it that history keeps repeating itself despite what has happened in the past and what continues to happen, and perhaps with programs that you have on prevention of genocide? What is in that quotation?
So I think it's an excellent question because it's connecting actually to what our psychologist spoke about. For many years we were silent. No one wanted to hear the stories. And if you don't listen to the stories, events happen again and again. I think in the last years we are starting to not be afraid to tell the stories, not only through historical narratives, but through individual stories. And those individual stories, I think, can create a difference. We're not there yet. We have a lot of work to do because I think many times we don't make the connections quickly enough in real time. If you think about April 1994, we were voting, we were happy, we thought about our future. Only 3,000 kilometers away, what happened to Christine in the same continent? So we don't make the connections quickly enough, but this is up to us, human beings, education institutions, NGOs, governments, to make the connections quickly. We see things that are wrong, we need to speak up, and we need to create the never again now, not to speak about it in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. I suppose you're talking about us being alert as well, and the young people will talk about being woke and not being too comfortable, because I think we have a tendency of being very comfortable. CEO?
Thank you. I'll be very short, and mine, it just goes directly to Dr. Songelo, to say that if you are looking at Africa and South Africa, do you really think that we are ready to have a woman leader, a woman president? Having listened to the stories in the boardroom.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, CEO. This question gets asked every time. I think Mama Baleka actually reflected on the power of women historically. It has been there. And even today, we do have powerful women who can lead impactfully. And I think some of us, what we are advocating is to speak out about the atrocities that we do have within the spaces that we operate in. And it is going to take this organization, this collaboration, this mobilization, this appreciation of women, appreciating each other, embracing each other, for that to happen. More often than not, in my own experience, is that we are our own enemies. When I see another woman who is stronger in certain aspects, I get to compete because I want more attention. This is this authenticity for me and the femininity that we do not embrace as part of leadership. And also the second point for me is that we associate leadership with celebrity. We actually do not understand that we can lead in silence, which is more impactful. When you lead in silence, it's in spaces where you operate. You don't have to, you have to volunteer because it starts in the smaller circles. Yes, in Africa and in South Africa, actually, there are so many powerful women that we know that can lead the country.
Actually. And in fact, I knew that story of the much celebrated statement of women pulling each other down was going to come up. It was only going to be a matter of time. But we seem to forget the issue of patriarchy, because we need to understand that we're always perceived through the man's eye. So the competition is all about that. And it's an ideology, it's a system of belief, because even with the white superiority ideology, we're always perceived through the white person's eye. So we're always in competition with each other, and we're always willing to say, right? So when you think about us being jealous of each other in competition, just think about that. Even the ideology of able-bodiedness, it's the same thing as well, because nabo they'll compete because they think being able-bodied is better and that kind of thing. So I think, Bomama, we're not inherently born hating each other and jealous of each other. So we need to make sure that we dispel that myth. There's two hands there, then maybe we'll take one, two last ones, and then we'll move on to, there's this side as well. Yes, the two from here, and then the one from the other side.
Thank you very much. I wasn't going to speak today, but I just got very concerned with the 1900 question that came out, if, we're ready for a woman leader. Why that question? Have we ever been ready for a man leader? Just for the record, the 1956 march that happened on the 9th of August happened against the backdrop of an organization that was only 2 years old. The Women's League was only 2 years old when that march happened. And the 20,000 women that were galvanized were coming from every nook and cranny of this country to go to Pretoria. There was organization, mobilization, communication, education, you name it, it was there. The 20,000 were representing. Ma'am De Bruyn, Kachalia, and others were representing the different races that were there. Helen Joseph, not Ruth First, Helen Joseph was representing some women had white babies on their backs because the madam did not know where they'd gone to, and they could not leave the white child with a domestic next door. It was machinery and a movement that this country had never seen. So it's worrying that to this day we're still asking, are we ready for a woman president? When we have women who, just after 2 years, 2 years is about 700 days of being in existence, that they organized themselves. That's one thing that I would like you to note. But what also is of concern to me is, why is it that we have led every sector of society? We may have been leading from the back sometimes, but our leadership gets questioned. Ma'am Charlotte Maxeke in person was at the table in 1911 with those men, saying there is a storm coming. Our land is going to be taken. 15th of June 1913 was just a formalization of the Land Act. The wave had been there for some time. Ma'am Charlotte had been at it for the longest. She had been at the table for a good 2 years before the 15th of June 1913. So why are we being questioned? I can go on and on. Cato Meno, nobody talks about Cato Meno without mentioning Dorothy Nyembe, who actually said we are going to bring down all of these beer halls that our husbands, when they come from work in their buses, the first stop in every township, by the way, in case you don't know, was next to the beer hall. So they get off there to go and drink. They get home drunk. They come there, they cause a riot at home. Then it is called our culture. Who would have been running that home? That is how Griffith Mkenge was not the power of the Mkenge law firm. It was Mam Mkenge. But because Griffith was the man, Griffith was being taken. She was not killed by sheer accident. The police, the system knew she was the brains behind Griffith. I can go on.
Voice
and on
of
and
experience, yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Mpumi Mbete. I'd rather not say because ngibaleke emsebentini. I see Mama Mbalega turn around. It's Mbete with an H, Mom. I stood on, Christine, you tell your story from such a point of power. I felt like I need counseling after listening. So I can't even imagine how you have come to this point. And it's sad that it is easier to find these stories archived and documented, and yet our language is disappearing, and certain cultural values and traits are disappearing. And perhaps not to racialize it, more particularly within the black community. You can read about the history of the Holocaust. You can read about the history of Western countries 100 years. To find just my lineage history documented is very difficult. I'm envious of the women that marched when there was no social media for them to organize. I wonder where the gap is with my generation and yours, Mama, that knowledge, that ability to organize was not passed on somehow. And yet we have the tools to connect globally. But culture, African tradition, African languages are going to fade in the next couple of years. I'm getting emotional, but I maybe want to direct the question to Dr. Songelo. I'm happy. I just purchased your book outside. There's not enough. I read the history Yamage Balegambete recently because I was voice-overing a documentary that I have not seen yet, but the script was available. I heard the history of Bomage, Ruth First, maybe the likes of Bomam Charlotte Matleken and the Helen Josephs. It's easier to recognize the names because there are hospitals in their memorial. But Mlandvo uyalahleka because anisanvuleli wona, the previous generation.
The time is now. Masbuyele Masisweni.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Sambo, the principal of Mngube High School, with my learners here. Let me greet everybody, especially to our in good movement. We don't have former speaker. Our speaker, Mem Balega. I'm happy that you were speaking about the total liberation of women, and I just want to comment. It's not always that you have to pose questions to people, but at some stage you have to take a stand and recommend the articulations of information that is lacking, more especially in our black communities, more especially in schools as a principal. Membalega, my chief, I just want to make this request. We still have leaders, women who can lead and take the country from point A to B. I'm sure Mandela will understand the language that I'm going to speak. Umkhabulo awusekho. Naseyikolweni I can pose a simple question to my learners. They are not going to answer that. But we need people like Bo Membalega, Bo Mem Mlambo Nguga. They are still here. I can mention so many, rather than mentioning Bo Mama Albertina Sisulu, Bo Lilian Ngoyi, Bo Mama Charlotte Mateke, who are still having the living testimonies within the organization. Well, let me not speak about the organization. Within the country that can take this information to our young generation. And if we don't bring this information to learners, to the young generation, this generation is going to be doomed and follow wrong people and wrong ideas. It only needs us as human beings to understand the liberation. What does it mean? And if we don't liberate the informative to our learners, I'm telling you, this country is dying. But lastly, I want to say we have got women who are capable, with potentials, courageous, and visionary women who can take the country from A to B. It's only when we escalate the information. Those women, in 1956, Charlotte Mateke, they started from the very same generation that we are having today. But unfortunately, they are ill-informed. And it's high time that women, you take a stand and go to our schools. That's where you have to start to make it a point that the information reaches this young generation.
Yes.
And we will have a better nation. I thank you.
Thank you. I usually will say that I think young people need to seek to know as well. We cannot always want to place the responsibility on other people. As a young person, you need to know where your victim empowerment center is. You need to know where your community arts center is. You need to know where your library is. You need to know where your municipal offices are. And you need to know your ward councillor. So I'm not too sure if they know that. So that we are meeting each other halfway. It's a bottom-up and top-bottom kind of like approach, and we meet each other. Otherwise, I think if we continue to do that, as I'm saying, to be comfortable and say I'm waiting for my ward councillor to come and tell me, to give me the water, the potholes and that kind of thing, it might be a bit of a challenge. We're going to do these three last inputs, and then we're going to move on to the signing of the MOU. I know that Umambaleka had wanted to say something, and then Udogotela as well, but I had wanted this one critical question for me, because when we're talking about genocide, we're talking about violence in general. And Karen spoke about the issue of empathy and the bystander, and when we talk about gender-based violence, we usually talk about the bystander syndrome. And we know that in South Africa, we've even had celebrity men who have been killed trying to protect a woman or to save a situation. So what do we say about that? How do we strike a balance between being proactive and empathetic and also just standing by? Because it's a risk, really. You know, something might happen to you, and perhaps that's the excuse that the guys would say as well, that I don't want to die on behalf of another. Yeah, so those three comments. Mama, would you like to start? And then Udogotela, and then Karen will close it, and then CEO, I think you might take over.
Thanks very much, Program Director. I want to comment about the issue of history and the deliberate blockage to the teaching of history to the younger generation. It's deliberate. And you must know that it's been a struggle not only in South Africa. It's been a struggle even throughout the globe, where there are people coming from communities that have an important history to be told about themselves and how they became inhabitants of the places where they are. And in particular, I'm talking about people of African origin, people who were taken away from the continent of Africa as slaves, traded across the oceans, and are only now beginning to know, even they themselves, of who they were, how they came to be where they are, who their grandparents were who had come as slaves where they are in the rest of the world, in the Americas and so on. I came across this history and these direct unpackings of these sorts of conversations from a task I had the honor to lead of honoring the 100 years, the centenary of the organization that Utata led at the time. And when we got to the United States, we came across an old man. He's still alive, and I hope he will come here to be with us for the celebration of the 30th anniversary, 30th birthday of South Africa's democracy. When he, Utata, addressed Parliament for the first time, a formally democratically elected collective of South Africans who were together in Parliament on that occasion, when he addressed for the first time on the 10th of May back in 1994. When we reached, well, we met the old man and he told us he was chairing a subcommittee of the UNESCO. That subcommittee was for the first time resolving that the history of liberation struggles is a matter of importance to the whole globe, to humanity. And therefore, in fact, that matter was then placed at a continental level at the AU and even here in South Africa at a national level. The Department of Sports, Arts and Culture is responsible for the program that you hosted, where we were talking about the African liberation route. What are we talking about? It was coming from that UN level, the recognition that there was this struggle for human rights of a people all over the globe, peoples all over the globe, defending themselves and their own right to human rights. So I'm saying we are only now waking up slowly. There's a subcommittee that was created under the portfolio of education to look at the issue of the teaching of history, because it is deliberately being blocked, including in academia, including among intellectuals. It's something that is not being encouraged. It's going to be called all manner of other names. No, teach them social science, teach them this, that, and the other, but not history. Because history will tell the story of who arrived where, did what. Why is Bloemfontein called Bloemfontein? Because Bloem found a fountain on the ground somewhere, in a place where there were human beings who lived there, and they had a name for the area. But no, it's put aside. We now celebrate Bloem. And we call this fountain by this European who has arrived. And I think one of the issues, and I want to make this point, also taking the point that I think it's, sorry, I don't remember, Tali made a valid point, and I agree with it. But I think we must also sit and recognize other matters that are not coming up and being heard enough. And that are the issues of the anger that still exists in people. People are fuming. They continue to fume. They actually just inherited from their grandfathers and other ancestors that anger. They don't even understand why they are so angry. And that thing needs healing. Nothing else is going to deal with it but healing. And that healing is a very complex issue. It also includes putting things by their name on the table, not fighting them, not fighting between us, but being ready to listen to each other and acknowledge one another's pain. Because if you don't acknowledge pain, you will not get anywhere, because I'm not hearing you. I'm too angry. I need to deal with this anger. We find it with the younger generation. We come to meetings and they are so angry. And we're like, why are these kids so angry? The other day when we were, in fact, in East London, at the Indaba of the Nelson Mandela Museum, an elder in the audience who we were with made the point that it's clear there's anger. And you can't deal with anger except to listen to it. And I learned this recently when I was preparing to take the Women's League to their national conference. There's so much anger you can. And the only thing I found worked for it is to listen to people. People would say why they were angry. They got to a point where they declared a dispute. Okay, so that's the center of the dispute. You listen to other one. And you find that the stories are not the same. Sometimes it's the same event, but there are different details. But you need to listen to people. Allow them to say what they need to say. Only then you will make progress. So I thought I should say this, and that history must be put on the table. We should teach the younger generation the history so that they can have a possibility to heal, to move into the future and have the potential, at least.
Siyabonga Mama ijulile, and we really need to continue with the reconciliation project. That very last one from Dogotela Karen, we're a bit worried about load shedding at 5:30, so we really have to conclude.
Indeed, it is not enough. And the invitation from me, and that is why I actually put Lipstick Chronicles as a movement, is we have to start to collaborate. And really, before the elders leave us, we write these things. We write all those powerful experiences that Abo Mama have, and we document them. With social media, the workshops, we really need to have intergenerational workshops where we can actually talk about these issues. And I must say, it is not enough, because that book is something I did in my own little study with my own resources, and it is my invitation to everybody here to start identifying and documenting, identifying powerful women and documenting the stories. Thank you very much.
Siyabonga Dogotela. Yeah, Karen is saving us the time, but I really had been interested in that bystander syndrome. CEO and the director, I think, of the center to come up for the signing of the MOU. Yeah, should we? All right, and just to thank you very much, the esteemed panelists, individually and severally, but just to say that we're also going to have a vote of thanks after that, so I'm sure you will be thanked at that point as well. But we sincerely appreciate the input and the enrichment we obtained today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And a round of applause for them.
will be brief and more precise about the significance and the meaning, value of this memorandum of understanding between Nelson Mandela Museum, which is based in Tata, and the Joburg Holocaust and Genocide Center. As Nelson Mandela Museum, we are trying our level best to ensure that we are working closely with all the institutions that are showcasing, these historical stories about the pain that humanity went through. Not only that, but we are also trying by all means to share the values of Nelson Mandela, the principles of Nelson Mandela, and also to spread, promote his legacy throughout the world. And that is why we are always looking for institutions of this nature, so that we come together and talk about these stories. If our schools do not teach history, then we should have alternative spaces where we are teaching this history. And center like this and the Nelson Mandela Museum are those alternative spaces to talk about our collective suffering and pain. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just from my side, what a great honor to be able to work together, collaborate, partner, and listen, write, talk about history, and create safe spaces, I think, where this history can be humbly listened to and accepted. And please tell your stories, write your stories, please, and let's work together for the betterment of our beloved country. Thank you.
So, congratulations. No, please proceed. I'm just passing the time as you sign, but just to congratulate the collaboration. It's all about partnerships. And just to thank the audience as well for being active. And Mama, I think it's not anger, but it's the passion and enthusiasm. I know that we could go on. I myself would really like to dwell in this place and really see Julia Lengoko. And having said that, then I do want to say that we'd like to call upon the counselor, one of our counselors for the NMM, to come and give us a vote of thanks, Miss Ndileka Mandela. She's also the granddaughter of Utata Nelson Mandela, our statesman, the father of the nation, our first president, our everything. Ma'am.
Wow, what an afternoon. I'm sure the youngins over there, you've learnt a lot. First, I'd like to thank Umambalega. What a matriarch. Thank you for reminding us that as women, because we birth children, we are nurturers, collaborators, and we hate war. We do not birth children in order for them to be killed in wars. Thank you for reminding us that as women, there's nothing we do better than mobilize. Demonstrated by the women who marched heroically on August 9th, 1956. To my fellow councillor, Mvusi, thank you for reminding us of the forgotten women of the rural areas, about the wars waged in boardrooms that women seldom speak about for fear of victimization. Thank you for reminding us that we need each other, men and women, in the boardrooms and outside of it. Thank you for reminding us that leadership is both a spiritual and a psychological journey. To Ms. Tali Nates, thank you for reminding us both the Holocaust and the genocide, that it is through the spirit of being neighborly that you are here to tell these stories, through the generosities of neighbors, the essence of Ubuntu. Thank you for reminding us that no human is more human than another human. To Christine, thank you for reminding us of the triumph of the human spirit. Your story is testimony that our minds can achieve anything if we set our intentions to. I'm baffled by how you are sane and how you are calm talking about the story. It boggles my mind that you never even went for counseling. That just shows the triumph of the human spirit that you all possess. To Karen, thank you for pointing out that it is important to teach about the Holocaust and the Rwandan genocide, that it will teach our children about empathy. Last week when I was here at the Holocaust, we were doing a prize giving for students. I saw epithets at the back there that talk about there are collaborators in any conflict. There are collaborators, there are bystanders and instigators. Now I'm talking to the young people here. When you see your fellow people being bullied through social media and physically, who are you? Are you a collaborator? Are you a bystander? Are you an instigator, or are you there to help? So ask yourselves, even all of us, when you see a situation that is not untenable, who are you in these epithets that are here? Lastly, I would like to thank our program director, Mrs. Adela Song. Thank you for reminding us of the importance of the words, how words create. There's a notion, the letter gender-based violence. What remains at the end of the sentence is what is lodged into our subconscious mind. Then we ask ourselves, why is there perpetuity in gender-based violence? Because in the word gender-based violence, there is violence in it. So we need to find a word that describes what we want to see. Because if you say to a person, don't think about a pink elephant, guess what you think of? You think of a pink elephant. So when we insert the word violence in trying to curb the scourge of women being abused and children and femicide, we need to remove the word of violence in gender-based violence. Then we will start winning this war. Before I finish, I would like to point out that in as much as apartheid was not a genocide like the Holocaust and the Rwandan genocide, we need to talk about apartheid. The notion that is the narrative that we must now sing Kumbaya because we're going out of democracy is nonsense. To say simply, why is the genocide talked about and the Holocaust has never happened is because it is taught about in our history classroom, which is why we must also do the same with apartheid. This notion of singing Kumbaya, when Mambalega said it so succinctly at the end, that people are angry, and it is precisely because we always sweep apartheid. The word apartheid is like a sewer word that we need to sweep under the carpet because it happened to us as a black people. There's a lot of people that died during apartheid. The likes of Adrian Flock would braai meat when people were burning. And those people have not told the truth until we have another round of TRC where people can vent their anger. We will never heal as a country. So we need to have this conversation over and over and over again. And lastly, I would really, as a council of the NMM, really welcome this collaboration because with the NMM and the Holocaust and Genocide Museum centers, because we now have safe spaces of venting our angers and talking about topics that are not popular. And these are the topics that we need to popularize in our social media and stop talking about the whole of nonsense that we talk about on social media and talk about things that are going to build us as a people. I thank you.
Then I think there's going to be a token of appreciation for the speakers, so maybe if you could just come up for a minute or two.
We'd like to present this to our panelists and our esteemed guests. Mambalega, we will start with you. Karen?
The next one is Tracy Henry. Okay, you can take, yeah, please do. The next one is moi. Thank you very much. The next person to come is Christine. Christine, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your story. We appreciate it. Thanks, man. Isn't she beautiful? Karin? Oh, you've got it already? Oh, we started with you, Banom. Tali? Tali, you have one. Oh, sisters again. Sizakele, thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you, Madam. Is that it? So should we give one to you?
All right, we don't know if it's an early dinner or lunch, but apparently refreshments are served. There's entertainment, I've been told as well. I mean, Angwa arts, culture and heritage, so portfolio here to our artists need to be supported. But I suppose the meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much once more.